Okay, performance event, an instance of authentic L2 communication in a professional context. I try and tend away from like this kind of like the cheesy stock art type of stuff you get from the images, but I love this one because this guy looks so into what he's doing. Okay, he just looks like he's into the flow and he's so passionate about what he's communicating. And I look at that, I'm like, that's exactly what I want my students to be able to do. Okay, he's not in English class. Okay, this is not going over stage 3 of the lesson. All right, he's actually he's talking about his looks like an architectural model here, and he's just really into it. And that to me is such a motivating image, and it's just on a slide, but keep in our heads because that's the goal of what we're doing. So this is an authentic context of L2 performance, and that's what we want to support. Next slide. And a little more kind of elaborated. Is it just takes a few minutes to upload?
There's a lag, yeah.
So me saying Carl achieves nothing whatsoever. Okay, I figured that out at this
point.
You're
making me feel miserable.
I know. Like I can keep on, like I'm like, oh, tapping my foot. So a specific upcoming communicative performance in the target language that merits sustained efforts to optimize the result of that event. Now, the thing I added here is that merits sustained efforts because most of our students have performance events, but sometimes it's not worth spending 3 weeks preparing them for an email because they just crank 3 or 4 of those out every hour sometimes. But a kind of a larger scale performance event, what would it be? When we think about what our students do, what is it they do on the job when it comes to communicative performance? Presentations, like the big 6 that we all everyone publishes course books on. There's lots as well. Some of them are you can differentiate between before we just had telephoning, and now we have telephoning and conference calling. Now we have telephoning, conference calling, and video conferencing, and each one of them is a little bit the same, but they have a different skill set. So these are the types of performance events that we want to be able to support. Just continuum here. Now, those of you will probably be laughing because for some reason my brain works in continuums. I don't believe very much in black and white. I think that everything goes along a cline. And what I want to show here is just kind of an idea of the task authenticity that we can divide up and put on a climb between tasks that are more what I call artificial, and not necessarily in a derogatory way. Sometimes, but not always, and talented. And so what we would see here would be over here a decontextualized gap fill, the type of thing that we're now on page 72 of a grammar book, and lesson 8. Exercise 8 is Mr. and Mrs. Smith have gone to the supermarket, and we don't know who Mr. and Mrs. Smith are. We don't care who they are. They don't even exist in this case. So that's on the farthest extreme of artificiality. Then we have info gap and role-playing simulation, presentation rehearsal will probably be over here. The actual presentation is not on this climb because it's the real thing. Okay. Now, because most business people see language learning as a means to an end, the reason they're doing that is to fulfill their professional goals. They don't necessarily, and this is again a generalization, they don't necessarily have an intrinsic interest in the structure of the language itself. Some do. There was even how many of you saw the Jeremy Harmer 240 comment thread on materials? Anyone see that? Or hey, Evan's laughing in the back. But there was a gentleman on there who said, when I was a language learner, I loved grammar translation. Okay, because I really get into it. Is that true, Gavin?
Yeah, I do love it.
I didn't know what there is. I'm like, it works for him because he's intrinsically interested in that structure of language. I think that's fantastic. This again goes to the whole idea of don't generalize. Most of my students, however, could not care less about that. Okay, all they want to do is be able to get to sell the product they're selling. Okay, so because of that, we really want to trend towards this end. Okay, let's get into the meat of this. Okay, so how do we support learner performance? First of all, I'm going to answer this question in two ways. The first thing I'm going to do is make a differentiation between types of syllabi or approaches to that. Okay, different approaches to course design, I've kind of set up a chart here that looks at things in terms of what type of course design has different selection of outcomes, and then what materials and processes do we use for this type of course design. Again, this is like a heuristic is what this is. So of course, it's an overgeneralization. But if we look at three types, I have defined out kind of curricular-based, more the traditional course book model, needs-based, which is like the thing that all of us are managing needs assessments on an ongoing basis. And then what I call performance-based. So this is really what I'm kind of focusing on right now because of the focus of this session. So if we look at kind of a curricular-based course design, in general, what we're doing is predicting what the generic performance goals would be. We're saying as authors and as editors and as publishers, we can anticipate in general what the students are going to need to do. Okay, it's like when Mark this morning was saying, just in case, learning objectives. Okay, so you're predicting generic performance goals. You work through a course book. Now, that's appropriate for many language teaching situations. Now, we want to try and maybe sometimes put a dog-me approach inside of that. We want to liven it up and personalize it for us. But if you're teaching 6 consecutive classes of 30 17-year-olds, sometimes you just can't do that. Okay, that's not our case in ESP. So we've moved down to a needs-based approach, which we all know and love. Okay, so instead of predicting generic performance goals, it identifies categories of performance goals. So these may be skill-based, like presentations, negotiations, et cetera. They could be notional, and it's for the notions that would be typical in a professional environment. Could be functional categories. I've divided up my presentation into 4 sections, that type of stuff. So we identify as performance goals, and then based on that, we select from a variety of resources to fulfill that. Most of the time, one single course book is not going to do that perfectly for our students. In general, we have a very eclectic approach and pull from a wide range of materials and make some of our own. Okay. Now, the performance-based goes maybe one step further, and I'm not suggesting that we need to move beyond needs-based or even curricular-based. Performance-based approach to course design, it doesn't predict or identify. It responds to performance events that come to you from your students. Okay, so the language needs for the event are what defines the materials and the methods. So it's very responsive. It's to me, in some respects, it's the ultimate of student-centered learning because we're not even coming in with this. Okay, we're not coming in this based on their needs as much as they're saying, man, I got a presentation in 3 weeks. Okay, what do we do? And at that point, the course starts, and it's over a couple of days after the presentation. We'll talk about this in more detail. So I think that here, is kind of a framework to look at this differentiation between what we do now in today's course design and performance-based. So second part of the second answer to the question, how do we support learner performance? So the process. Okay, so what I'd like to, you guys hear is really a nice, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can take away and start to do it, immediately. Again, they're very general steps that many of us may do implicitly already. One of the points that I'll be arguing is that making it very explicit has lots of benefits as well. So a 4-step process approach to performance-based teaching. Step 1, performance event. Okay, so in the class, might be a small group, might be individual, whatever. You get that, oh, I go on a business trip. I'm going to have to go out to dinner with these people. Oh, I never know what to say. I had one of my favorite students of all time. This was in Buenos Aires. One of the great things about running a school is you get to cherry pick students. Okay. This guy, he was the president of Hewlett Packard in Argentina. Brilliant man, fantastic guy, Ugo Strachan. And he would say, Cleve, I can go to Silicon Valley where the HP headquarters are. I can talk about my business for 3 hours a quarter. Okay, no problem whatsoever. Then I go to lunch, I went to lunch with guys, and this guy next to me was telling a story, and he was talking about his daughter being a cheerleader and something about her pom-poms. He's like, and I scared to death. I feel like I was walking through a minefield. How do I react? So, of course, he put the neutral face that y'all put. How many of you are second language learners? Okay, so you know the neutral face. But you're not quite sure if it's a joke or if you understand or what it means. Okay, so you kind of do the neutral thing. So it's in case it's not funny, but not at all funny, you can retract the smile. You know that whole thing. The point is that it might be a performance event such as a business trip that it entails, dinner and then conferences and then sales presentations and then negotiating the contract and signing the contract and post, sales service. It could be a variety of things. But the point is the learner drives. It's learner-centered. The learner drives the syllabus. Okay, so the teacher supports and guides. We all do this anyway as coaches. Obviously, other stakeholders, I've had fantastic success in a collaborative. I haven't had fantastic. I have failed less frequently by working directly with the line managers. We're just talking to them as a collaborator. Their people are doing. So step one, select a performance event. Step two is going to be define the key messages. And this is a step that lots of times we forget. So it's not enough to say, okay, you got a presentation. All right, now we're going to talk about how to start the presentation. You know how it is. I think in the introduction, there's always who's your audience and find the message. So what we have to do here, okay, is define ask our students what is the key thing that you want to be able to communicate. Okay? If they're going on a business, there might be I want to be able to tell a great story about my country, personal anecdote. It could be benefits for the product or benefits for the service. It might be that your student knows that there's going to be a question in his presentation. They're going to ask about something. He knows they're going to ask that really tough question. That's the type of anticipatory goal setting that you do by finding out what the key messages are. And then, of course, we all do this. Okay, we identify the languages needed, whether it's structural, lexical, whatever. So, now, one of the things, I don't know where I have it on here, but you'll see it in a second. One of the things I want to emphasize is we need to document all of this. I'll tell you why in just a second. But the more we document and the kind of almost highly structured, highly organized approach that we can take with this, the better. So that's step two. Step three is going to be obviously, and we resource and we teach. So we've identified the language, and it could be lexical for the professional, although lots of times it's not because that's actually sometimes much better than we do. It might be other types of vocabulary, functional language, structural stuff. We've got that documented. We now pull a syllabus together based on that. It's from a variety of sources, lots of authentic material, and of course, primary source is the learner, pulling from the student. This is where we get his PowerPoint presentation up there. We get the emails. We get the product documentation. That's what he has to sell. All of that is the key. As long as it corresponds to what his key message is, okay, that's gold for us. Okay, then, and this is so overgeneralized, but in a sense, if you've got a 3-week or a 1-month period, you might start out with a little more traditional part of the PPP series, and then, of course, get towards more pre-production and simulations and role-playing and actual rehearsals and the filming and that type of thing.